We are here today to chat with you all about amplifying cultural resonance and specifically around the branding strategies around that. So you all met me earlier today, so I'll save you that again. But I do want to introduce you to our very diverse and excellent panel here. So they're going to go ahead and kick it off and let us know a little bit about themselves. And then tell us not only a little bit about yourself, but then also tell us a little bit about what you do. And then as a fun little icebreaker here, they're going to tell us if they could be a brand spokesperson for any brand outside of their own, what would that brand be?
Awesome, fantastic. First of all, I want to say big thanks to Brand Innovators and the invite and organizing the summit. And thanks to the Kraft team for hosting the event. Really appreciate it. This has been fantastic. It's great to be here. I'm Fernando Bernardo. I'm the Director of Marketing of the Fannie Mae business at Ferrero. I've been with the company now for more than 4 years. Before I was in the cookies business. You can notice on my broken accent, not originally from the States. I was born and raised in Brazil. Moved here years ago for business school, and then I worked at General Mills for a few years. Worked in the Andes business, Yoplait, then moved to Scotch Brite business under 3M, also in Minnesota. And then when we made the acquisition of the cookies business in Chicago 4 years ago, that's when I joined the company. If I were to be a spokesperson of a brand, I think this blends a little bit my side of a marketer and my side as a consumer would be Optimal Nutrition. I'm a big consumer of nutrition, sports nutrition products, and Optimal Nutrition. It's a brand that I look at the brand and say that it's a brand that really gets me, who I am as a person, my hobbies, the things that really fulfill my desires. But at the same time, it's a brand that does an exceptional job with their email marketing, which is, we also have a big email marketing program at Fannie Mae. I just look at that brand and I find sources of inspiration in many things they do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Gaski. I'm with McDonald's. I'm Director of Marketing and Intelligence for the last about 7 years. Before that, I was actually at the agency side, still doing strategic analytics, but for a creative agency at FCB Chicago, which some of you may know. And then a little bit different path to get here. I was in the U.S. military before that, working in military intelligence, so a little bit different type of data. So let's see, the brand that I think that I would choose would probably be a spokesperson for the U.S. Army, because they got to work on their branding still. They recently went back to be all you can be. They did Army of One when I joined, and I was like, that's so dumb. That's so bad. So I think that they could still use a little bit of help in that arena.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. My name is Pierson Curtis. I work at H&R Block. I lead our marketing strategy for our DIY tax service. And my role sits between marketing and the product. I have to make sure in our marketing strategy that the right hand's talking to the left hand to make sure we have one cohesive strategy. If I were to be a brand spokesperson for any brand, not H&R Block, and I'm not just saying this because we had some at the break, but it would be Spindrift. So I absolutely love the raspberry lime flavor. My wife makes fun of me because I have one every single day, almost. So yeah, Spindrift would be, I'd be a spokesperson for them.
Amazing. All right, so let's kick us off. We'll start with cultural resonance and the topic of that. So Pierson, why don't you kick us off? And how do you define cultural resonance?
It's how your brand is perceived by consumers. Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. It's like, how do they feel when they see your brand? There's a wide spectrum from dislike to indifferent to loved. And where does your brand fall on that spectrum? That's how I define it.
If I can add, yes, I think I heard this word so many times this morning, as all of you, but authenticity and really being, like I said, with Optimum Nutrition, as example I just gave, when I look into a brand, I say, this is a brand that gets me. And it's not about, it's a product that I want to buy, path to purchase, it's a separate topic, and it's just as important, but it's really when the brand how it transpires, its values, its beliefs, and just look at that brand, it's like, they understand who I am, and I want to be part of that culture, that I feel I belong. And that's what I define as cultural resonance as well.
I guess for me, it would be a little bit in that vein, but a little bit further. For us, it's about do you see yourself in that brand? Is this brand somebody people like me buy? And so for McDonald's, as democratic of a brand as we are and we represent everyone, the real challenge is how do we be culturally relevant for everyone, right? And so the idea is how can I connect to you as a person and you see yourself as this is a place for people like me go to McDonald's. And so that's how we measure it.
So thinking about just social media channels and the roles that social media channels play and other digital platforms also in helping to amplify that cultural resonance, are there any platforms that you find to be particularly effective across each one of your very different brands?
Can kick it off.
Sure.
Yes, I think everything starts with business strategy, with brand purpose, and really understanding where is your consumer, how are they expressing their lives into the different channels. I'll tell you, as an example, not a growing social channel today, Facebook, but it's a way how in Fannie Mae we connect to many of our consumers who shop in the Fannie Mae stores. It's an older consumer who is not engaged with many social channels, but they are seen on Facebook. Huge platform for us for that particular channel. But we do engage with other channels like Instagram and Twitter, and sometimes even LinkedIn, and their different purposes. When we want to spark and ride a wave, I was talking surf today, just thinking of this. Sometimes there's a certain wave you want to ride, and it needs to be the right timing, and then we are going to need to be in the right channels for this. And even YouTube for longer term storytelling, I would say they have different purposes, but they're all part of what we do.
Yeah, we quick example from the H&R Block. So in the DIY tax category, we had been losing market share for 4 years in a row, and that just sucks. No one likes losing, especially 4 years in a row. So we knew we had to do something different to grow market share and also resonate with the next generation of tax filers. A lot of people don't choose a tax brand until they have to. So it's a unique moment where we can capture the brand love when someone makes the decision about who they're going to use to file their taxes. We invested heavily into TikTok. We also went to market on that platform with very punchy creative that specifically called out switching from our competitor, who maybe some of you know. They're pretty formidable in terms of the DIY tax service. And we saw not only a jump in favorability with Gen Z, but more importantly, the business grew. We grew market share. Gen Z was our largest segment of growth. So I think it goes, Fernando, to your first point about being grounded in the business strategy and the business outcomes as well. And TikTok was a key enabler for that.
I have the very fun job of telling you the returns on all of the social platforms. So it's actually really interesting because back in 2017 when I started, we didn't have an ROI on social measurement. And there was a lot of folks saying like, what are these? Why should I invest there, right? And so as we grew our measurement capabilities, we actually see social platforms and channels have the strongest ROI. So it's not about just being there because we're obviously trying to be in culture and in the moment, but it's actually a way of people are consuming media these days, and they're in a more receptive, open position when you're scrolling versus if I'm, getting interrupted on, frankly, YouTube or interrupted on a TV show. It's a little bit of a better engagement platform, and that's what customers are telling us, is they're more receptive in that moment to advertising than something else.
Can I ask a question just because I'm curious?
Sure.
We're going totally off script. How are you measuring the ROI on some of those social platforms? Because I'm thinking like someone sees a McDonald's ad on social media, they're not maybe immediately going to drive to the drive-through. Maybe they do, I don't know. So like how are you measuring the ROI when it's not like direct response like that?
100%. And remember, we still have a cash business in a lot of sense, right? So we are old school in the fact that we have traditional MMM. So for those that don't know MMM, that's marketing mix media modeling. And what's great about that is that you're actually looking at a really long trend line. And so you're doing different, basically correlations in terms of what is my pressure in market. And we break it down for each social platform, including TikTok, which we had great returns with. Hopefully we get to keep it. But like, yes. So then we were able to see like what's the actual impact then on the marketing driven sales. And so we can get an ROI based on that. So I think for especially walled gardens, having an MMM has been instrumental in actually being able to measure some of those things.
We use MMM as well, so
yeah.
I was just curious. Thanks.
Good question over there. All right, so transitioning a little bit over into maintaining an authentic voice. What strategies do you recommend for brands looking to authentically engage with specific cultures or community? And Alex, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so McDonald's, as you have all seen and felt over the last couple of years, is really leading with customers who are brand fans and are celebrities. I think when you think about when we're saying somebody for people like me, one of the ways people decide a brand is for somebody like them is that they see representation of people like them, people who they look up to, actually participating and celebrating that moment in their brand. They're not, embarrassed by their McCafe cup. They're loud and proud about their McCafe cup. And so when we're looking for, especially in the influencers and the celebrities we partner with, one of the screens that we do is, are they a brand fan? And we will not work with somebody who is not a brand fan first. And so that's part of the authenticity that we bring, because if we have somebody who never eats McDonald's saying, oh, look at this meal that I did with McDonald's, that's just not authentic, right? So we're trying to show up differently, and then we're also trying to engage with different communities. So now that everyone and all of our competitors are in the celebrity space, we have, evolved to say, well, what micro communities can we talk to? And so we're doing a lot right now with anime. So if you've seen the McDonald's commercials, it's all about how do I talk to a micro community that's made up of a multi-generational approach, made up of a multi-ethnic approach, and really meet them at their passion points and really lead with intersectionality versus just saying this is multicultural marketing. We're actually leading with this is a GCM strategy, literally GCM as in for general customer marketing and not just Caucasian consumer marketing. And how do we bring that to life in a GCM way, but being diverse in passion points for anyone who's interested in anime?
I love that we've finally, I feel like, crossed over into what you're talking about in that GCM, and it's about time, right? So, Fernando, I know you have a really good story to share here.
Yes, absolutely. I think engaging with communities, this example I'm going to bring is from Ferrero. Actually, when we made the acquisition of the cookies business and we look at what's happening in the famous Amos chocolate chip cookies brand, we saw there was a brand that was in decline, and a lot of the decline was coming from the key consumer who had high penetration with Black households. And social listening was key for us to really engage with the communities at that time. It was a lot of consumer research, a lot of panel data, and come back to consumer research. Then we went back to the founder, who was a Black entrepreneur of the brand, that led us to the Black Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C. And it was that collaboration and I would say co-creation of what could be the relaunch of that brand, and that it was really ended up with being one successful program we did, which is Famous Amos Entrepreneurs Initiative, where Famous Amos ended up every year. Now we do like kind of a Shark Tank type of competition, and we grant $50,000 to 3 Black-owned businesses with the sponsorship and the support from the Black Chamber of Commerce and from our founder, Wally Amos. And that just became part of the brand and part of how we re-engaged with consumers and made the brand become relevant again.
Love that. And Pierson, what about you?
What was the question?
Yes. So the question was about strategies when it comes to brands looking to authentically engage with specific cultures or communities.
Oh, yeah, I think it's...
We haven't talked about her enough today, so let's talk a little bit about your example with Taylor Swift.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it got brought up twice already, 3 times, like, they're stealing my thunder. That's okay, though. She's everywhere, and that's great. So H&R Block's based in Kansas City, and obviously the Chiefs had a fantastic run in the NFL playoffs. Before, during, and after every playoff game, we noticed that there was a lot more engagement and chatter on Reddit around like music communities or Taylor Swift communities or anything to do with her or music. So we thought this made sense for our brand in a lot of ways. So on those Reddit communities, we increased our presence with H&R Block memes and posts that had nothing to do with taxes. We leveraged our mascot. Maybe you've seen him in some of our commercials. His name is Max. So we were able to show up in a fun and lighthearted way. Yes, there was H&R Block branding about it, but we weren't trying to talk taxes in an environment where no one wants to hear about taxes. We just showed up with something that was true to our brand, and also it never helps when it has a nice local connection, which we were just fortunate to be able to leverage that as well. So moral of the story is if you can incorporate Taylor Swift into your brand, you should do it.
Great takeaway from today, for sure. All right, so thinking about like maintaining your authentic voice across different types of campaigns, how do you find that your teams and your brands achieve that?
Yeah, we've kind of been on a journey trying to do that. We used to have this with our branding and creative. We we use the phrase matching luggage, that everything had to match. And while that sounds good and maybe it applies for some instances, it kind of limited us. So what we're shifting to now is having one or two common threads that we want our strategies to achieve, but then allowing for flexibility to make sure our creative is relevant to the context of the platform or the audience that's seeing it. So we're trying to find that balance between uniformity and customization. And I don't think we're perfect at it, but we're getting there. And the way we can ensure if it's working or not is just detailed measurement on a lot of variety of metrics to know if our new approach is actually working.
If I can build on this, I feel like in every company we have our frameworks, and I would say the brain and the heart, which is many companies use that framework. But once you solidify the brand foundations of your business, it takes a lot of hard work. It takes time and it takes alignment. But once that's solidified and you know what's your brand mission, your brand vision, the personality of a brand, the universal truths, and then your message and your communication and the way how we transpire that into our social channels, into our TV ads and packaging. And it's just, you will look back and you see, does this ladder up to my brand strategy? Because as we say, a brain and a heart is like a person. All right, a brand is like a person, and we're all dressing this today. We're probably not going to be dressing this on Saturday night or Sunday morning. We're going to be the same people, but we're going to be dressing something different, but that still ladders up to who we are and what are our beliefs and our values. So it's and they're always constantly revising this. We look into a certain piece of creative and say, but does this stand for what we are? Does this stand for our brand? And like Fannie Mae, we have distribution in the club channel. We have a big FannieMae.com, Fannie Mae stores, and a huge distribution in food, drug, and mass. So you can think of how complex that environment that is, and we need to make sure that the brand, it's one brand, and it needs to come across the consumer as one brand, but it's going to be actualized in a different ways that rolls up to our strategy.
So for McDonald's, it's about speaking like a fan. For many years, we had a very brand corporate voice. And once we allowed ourselves to speak like our fans speak about us, you unlock a lot different passion, a lot different authenticity, and also the idea of speaking like a fan can be tailored to the groups that I'm talking about. So speaking like a fan of McDonald's might depend on my age, on my gender. It could depend on where I live locally. I think some of even the way people talk about McDonald's as Mackie D's, or like the different ways in can be different. And like if we're able to speak like a fan, we're going to be authentic to ourselves, but it also can be then tailored. And I love the analogy you used about different clothing. It's like we can show up in different ways as long as we are speaking like a fan about McDonald's.
I have a 5.5-year-old little boy, and I have to say he's one of McDonald's biggest fans, but he doesn't call it McDonald's. He calls it Old McDonald's, which is very, I had to sneak that in. And then just adding on to that, as far as like you look across the different campaigns, Alex, how do you measure just kind of like the success across, and what analytics matter to your teams as you're bringing them back to, those strategy discussions?
So what's interesting is that we used to, and I think lots of brands are guilty of this, but I'll call ourselves out. We used to have multiple goals for every single campaign. So this has to drive sales and check and visits and digital goals. And so one of the things that we did is we said, no, for each one of our brand stories, we are going to pick one goal. One. It's really hard for the teams to get behind. They're like, well, what about this? Or what about that? And so that's what we call our success metric. Everything else is diagnostic metrics. It's not that we won't achieve other things when we do one thing really well, but if we're going to get one thing right, it needs to be this success metric. And so that metric will depend on what the campaign's designed to do and what that brand story is designed to do. We have specific brand stories and dollars dedicated to our app and growing loyalty as a channel. We have different ones that are about 18 to 24-year-olds in that customer visitation in that age range. We have different ones that we are looking at for sales and that check drivers, and some for specifically for visits, right? So the idea being is that by trying to do every single thing in every single campaign, what would happen is you'd get first some convoluted campaigns, and then at the end you were really struggling to say, was this successful? Because it did some things well and some things bad. But unless you have the discipline of saying, this is before the campaign runs, before it's designed, what we are going to get after, and this is the one thing we want to move in this campaign, it's really hard to measure it afterwards if you haven't aligned to that pre-launch.
Can you come talk to our team about that?
I was going to say the
Sure,
same.
I will do.
Yes.
I think it's like it resonates with me so much. Like, you have to be able to build consensus and before you launch. Like, this is the one thing we're going to deem success on, and it sounds so easy, but it's actually really challenging to get your boss's boss, the finance department all bought in on like what the one success metric is. But I think it comes down to discipline. It's a good point.
Yeah, I think you both bring up really great points when it comes to just change management. You're talking about this idea about campaigns and no longer being this matching luggage set, and you're talking about this one KPI and being very strict with it. What are some of your biggest learnings when it comes to this, enacting this kind of change management in your orgs?
You have to repeat yourself a lot. So especially for taxes, there's one tax season. So we spend 8 months planning. A lot of effort goes into that. And then we run all our marketing in 4 months, essentially. So what we have to do is remind the key stakeholders, both in marketing and on the business teams, that, hey, this was our strategy. We're changing this for this reason. Remember, we told you in October. And then next month we have to tell them again, hey, remember we told you. So I think it comes down to repetitive education, which maybe has the bad connotation, but it's just educating other people about why the change is important, and then reminding them why you did the change. And then once your campaign has ran, being pretty transparent on if the change worked or not, and how you can adjust it moving forward. So I think it just comes down to a lot of education.
I'm going to add on to that. So it's the repetition and then not getting discouraged when you don't get it right. I think I was with the brand probably 3 years until like the repetition worked. So don't give up. If you're not there today, I think it's very easy to be like, well, I tried and my leadership aren't doing it. So I think that to continue with it, so it's a repetition. And then whenever we do something that I think is a bad idea, I tell myself that it's a natural experiment and we will learn from this and we will be able to take this forward. So there's no failures, there's just great learnings.
As long as you don't make the same mistake twice, it's okay.
No, sometimes you got to do that to really get it, right?
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I feel fortunate. At Ferrero, we actually have a very robust but diligent and consistent process. And I think consistency is key. Sometimes you can't just replan and redo everything all the time because some A, B, or C didn't work well. But you have to stay consistent unless, unless everything is wrong, and then you need to assess a revolution. But we talk a lot about evolution from one year to another. An example, Fannie Mae, we've been running the same creative for now 3 consecutive years. It's paying so many dividends, and we measure with brand awareness consideration. So we see the value of consistency is what really helps you build brand equity.
Love that. All right. Also back to you. How critical is content creation in amplifying that cultural resonance? And what types of content have you found to be most effective?
If I found today, effective content is, again, I think I used this word a few minutes ago, co-creation. At Ferrero, we do a lot of co-creation with our customers, with our consumers. The example actually I'm going to bring is not from Ferrero, it's from my past journey at 3M when I was in the Scotch-Brite business. And when I got in that business, fierce competition with private label and very trying to fight who has the stickiest lint roller in the market and the price per ounce. And when we actually spend time to consumers and say, let's do something different, something that private label cannot do, and then don't invest in advertising. And then actually consumers, they buy lint rollers because they don't understand what is the tape that is the stickiest tape, but they buy because I can embrace the mass. I can have my pet, I can have my cat or my dog because they shed, and all I want is to embrace the mass. We brought couches and sofas to Central Park in New York City. This was a few years ago, so then there was like the top 10 Insta dogs, brought them to Central Park, made an event, and really created a whole campaign, Embrace the Mass, which in fact, it wasn't led, like the big creative wasn't led by an agency, it wasn't led by the marketing team, it was really co-created with just about the amount of time that we spent into people's house. We had a general manager at that time, like, all you need to do is spend time in people's house, go to people's house, go to people's house. We spent a lot of time in people's house, and really the creative and the campaign came from the hands and fingerprints of our consumers at that time.
Alex, how about brands? How can they measure the impact of their cultural resonant branding strategies? And most importantly, what metrics are the most telling? When you go from strategy to the actual execution, what are those metrics?
Okay, so before we got into our journey of being a culturally relevant brand, we were not. And I was part of the sell-in team to say, like, why we should do this. And there was this real belief that if you went after 18 to 24-year-olds, it would be, for brand equity, for brand perception, and that it won't drive sales and visits. And what we saw, in fact, they are some of our most profitable campaigns. When you talk to customers in their language with a brand fan moment or an insight like what you talked about with the couches, it actually can resonate deeper on a deeper level than just talking about the product itself. So we actually find that our core KPIs, of course, we're looking at visits for 18 to 24-year-olds. That one we can measure that pretty well. But we actually see it halo benefit of most profitable sales and visits. So you actually could use your traditional metrics for a brand or a culturally relevant campaign. And I think that there's this still misconception with a lot of C-suites that if you do that, you're just moving brand perception or brand awareness. And it's not. You should be doing this because it is profitable to do so. There is a business reason that you need to plan culture.
I hope someone was recording that for your C-suite up there. Pierson, anything from you?
I have nothing to add on that. I think Alex nailed it.
I think we're coming up on time here. So my last question, and we'll go down the line here. What do you think we can expect for the next phase of culturally resonant marketing?
So I'm fascinated by how many celebrities we're seeing in advertising right now. I think over 50% of the Super Bowl commercials had a celebrity, and I don't know if that's the right strategy for every brand. So I think actually for cultural resonance, I'm interested to see when we reach a saturation point where consumers are almost turned off by that, and maybe we shift towards something else. I don't know what that is, but I think just putting, like Arnold Schwarzenegger with State Farm, does he actually use State Farm? Probably not. But Addison Rae with the candy, that made nerds, excuse me. Yeah, like that made a lot more sense. So I think just putting a celebrity on your brand for the sake of it might backfire at some point for certain brands.
I would say focusing on microcultures. So if you think about Twitch, which is a large gaming community of where people live stream, et cetera, you can start to see brands starting to play in that kind of space, play with podcasting, play with different smaller micronisms of culture than they were before. So I think that's something that excites me because it gets us out of the one type of marketing, or you need to go to brand marketing for Asians this way, or for somebody else this way, or for women with children this way. And you start to speak on people's passion points. And people go, why do we need to do that? That's really small. It's really niche. But when you can connect in a really relevant way, you actually are inclusive by being exclusive, because you're talking about that. And you can say, I don't like pickles, but I understand people love pickles or hate pickles, so I get that is an insight that I can latch on to, and I can talk about. There are people that love pickles, and there are people who hate pickles, and sometimes they get married. That's the kind of thing that we can really talk to people differently, and so I think that the microcosms are going to be where we play next.
Yes. I would close with, to your point, Alex, couldn't agree with you more. It's a lot about personalization. And when you look into what's happening in technology, and also I agree with whoever said today, it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence. We've started taking some steps in the family business, and it's blowing our minds that how much it's not going to necessarily replace people, but it's going to make us so much more efficient. The way how we can personalize our products, our communication, the way how we come to consumers' lives.
Love that. All right, I want to open it up to any questions that you all might have. I see one over there.
Hi, great panel, thanks. I am curious, as we talk about cultural resonance, for those of us who are dealing with revenue that's not going so well and tighter budgets and being challenged to do more with less for year over year over year, I don't always have the funds to get a celebrity partner or to do an activation on Roblox. How can I be culturally relevant, or can you tell me of a time when a big brand like McDonald's was culturally relevant in a really scrappy way that made a really big impact?
Yeah, so for us, what we're trying to do is lead with fan truths, or things that are very true that our fans can connect with. For example, sharing fries. So when your girlfriend says, oh, I'm not hungry, make sure you get an extra set of fries, because they're going to steal your fries. So the idea being that you can lead about what's true about your brand and talk to people differently. Even using your own products, I think, is one. And then the second one is there is a wonderful set of independent creators that are smaller scale that can still speak to their micro community really, really well, and actually have better total returns for us. So those small to medium influencers are people you should consider, because they're not the most expensive, but they can, especially if they've got a good engagement, they can actually be a higher quality impression than somebody who's big and expensive and frankly might not be that big of a brand fan. So small and scrappy, follow the insights of how people use you.
The only thing I would add is, to your point about following the insights, is you might have to place a few more concentrated bets. So if your budget's flat year over year, it's going down, is there one certain audience segment that you should invest a disproportionate amount of your budget in to see growth? Maybe like back to the framework that was mentioned earlier, the purist versus the tourist. Like maybe there's a certain segment that you need to be investing more in, even on a flat budget, to drive outsized growth. Like 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the customers. So that's something to look at as well.
I would say fewer and bigger is going to be your best mantra going through this. And I've been through budget cuts in the past, or if you work for a public company, it happens every quarter. Budget cuts. You stay with fewer and bigger and go after your big bets. They might seem small on the magnitude of your budget, but they can mean a lot if you stay focused.
Any other questions for our folks up here? We do have a few more minutes if we want to. Yes, great. And over here next.
Hi, Paige from Molson Coors. So the thing about culture is it's always kind of forward thinking, and things are changing all the time, especially with Gen Z, particularly in businesses where, like, we all know about selling the dream up, right? And like, we've gotten that buy-in, we've gotten that belief, we know it's going to resonate with our consumer. How do you build that belief maybe with different stakeholders? I'm thinking franchisees, for example, that maybe don't understand this, like their BTS, what's this back to school meal? I'm not really sure what's going on here. How do you get that buy-in while tapping into the speed of culture, maybe with people who, again, don't understand it?
Yeah, that was rough. Selling in Travis Scott, I took a lot of heat. And frankly, corporate had to pay for the first one, and then they saw the results, and then they funded it. So in some sense, you just have to do it, whether it fails or succeeds. I think you have got to try it. So if you can get an experimentation mindset, that helps. But yeah, at this point, what we've done is we have a smaller group that we're able to bring in before somebody signed, and we make them sign NDAs, and they now know that they are not the arbiters of cool, and they should probably go talk to a 24-year-old in their life because they're like, I do not know who this person is. And now they're like, that's okay. I trust you. But it took a long time to build up that trust. And believe me, the first couple, like, I got some nasty phone calls, to be honest.
Hi, this is Valerie again. Hope it's okay to ask a few questions today. So speaking on the cultural resonance, something we in the food and bev world see come up again and again, particularly with the younger demo, is holistic health and wellness. So curious, for those of you who are on a more of an indulgence brand or something doesn't particularly stand for nutrition, is that integrated in your strategy moving forward, or do you take a stand and say, you know what, that's not us, we don't play in that lane?
I think we are in food and beverage. At Ferrero, the answer is yes, and that comes to life in the different brands and different forms and ways. And premium chocolate, the Fannie Mae business, we have recipes with no sugar-free. We're looking for, we know there's different demands, but again, ultimately, our primary consumers is people who are looking for the most indulgent chocolate, who are looking for the best premium recipes made with Americana ingredients, crafted into premium recipes, and they are not necessarily, they don't see necessarily as unhealthy, but it's really staying focused and truthful to what our core consumer is looking for. And then when you see opportunities in these specific niches across the company, then we charter different initiatives to go after those opportunities, and then we decide what's the best brand that has a fit to go into a certain area.
So the pandemic changed things for us. During that time period, the focus on mental well-being really rose to the top, and McDonald's was seen as all of a sudden part of my well-being and part of how do I seek out comfort and familiar favorites, and how do I actually serve as that well-being and respite to what is a crazy world. And I know I love a Big Mac. And so we before had stayed away from this idea of well-being outside of maybe just live a balanced lifestyle. But now we're finding that our customer is using us in a different way that they were before. And we are part of a well-being, especially a mental health structure of how do I make sure that I'm having moments for myself and to get this peace and treat and relaxation moment. And then, geared myself to go out into the crazy world. And so we're playing in that space more because our customers are telling us that's how they're using us. And I think that's been a little bit of a shift for us. And then what we've seen for Gen Z is the fad culture diet is not something that they're engaging in. They're not interested of doing their mother's lifestyle of this fad diet and that fad diet. They're less about counting calories and more about looking what they eat across. And they're okay with the chocolate. And I think we mentioned ice cream for one of the other brands. And they're okay with the occasional Big Mac, and for them, it's they're considering it part of a well-being lifestyle that includes their mental health.
So you're saying Big Macs make everyone happy?
Yes.
I would agree.
Applause for a fantastic conversation.